So if we were to look at different integration strategies, how we go about integration, we can look at these on two axes. We can look at this need for autonomy on one axis, and we can look at the need to transfer knowledge. How important is knowledge transfer when we from the acquired organization? And there's basically 3 or 4 different strategies. In the case when knowledge transfer or the need for knowledge transfer is high, but the acquired firm's need for autonomy is low, we'll basically practice absorption. So the acquired firm is absorbed into the acquiring firm. Strategic interdependence in this case is necessary. We can't keep them independent. We will adapt the structure to the needs of the new owners, and we have to do this relatively quickly. And this may actually require also changing the acquired firm's culture. But this is the first choice where there's high level of strategic interdependence that is required, and there's little need for organizational autonomy. At the opposite of this would be a situation where we have a high degree of autonomy that's required of the acquired firm, and we don't really need to learn from the acquired firm. The acquiring firm doesn't need to undertake any knowledge transfer. The acquired firm in this case is probably well run, but it's not very compatible with the acquirer. This is typical of conglomerate deals. We'll preserve them as they are, and we'll request very few changes be made. The third strategy is that of symbiosis. Symbiosis is typical in, for example, the merging of professional services or acquisition of professional services, where we can have high levels of creativity. In this case, we want autonomy. We would like to have autonomy of the acquired organization, but we also need to learn from the organization. So what we're going to try to do is learn the best from each other, and to avoid issues of autonomy, we'll retain the incumbent management at start and then move that management over time. But initially, we'll maintain some degree of autonomy. We'll learn from each other and then move away from that over time. But we need to share practices to benefit from this acquisition. And the last one, as you've seen, is the intensive care version of M&A. In this case, there's little knowledge transfer, there's little benefit from knowledge transfer, and the acquired firm's need for autonomy is very, very low. In this case, there's unfortunately little to be gained, and we've basically acquired a firm probably in a bad way, and we want to avoid contamination from any integration that can occur. So what we'll do in this case is impose on the acquired firm some very strict turnaround targets for them to straighten up their act. Okay, now we'll move on towards strategic alliances. So companies often work together in the form of what's called a strategic alliance, and this involves collaboration with all or sometimes just parts of an organization. They don't need to merge or acquire one another. And this is what's called a strategic alliance, where we share resources and activities to pursue a common strategy. And as I mentioned before, this can be either with or without equity. We can have a JV, or we can have a strategic alliance where we work together, we collaborate, and create an offer. On average, corporations are managing about 30 alliances at any given time. It's a very common thing in an organization. Companies that do manage alliances must understand the role and the difficulty of focusing on collective success. I mean, you can't work as if the other organization wasn't there. There's a high degree of interdependence in strategic alliances. Sometimes the alliances actually compete against each other, and winning relies on creating this collaborative advantage, being able to work with your alliance partners. So effective alliances require that we're able to manage a network of people and build that network and develop tight links with network members. And that's the hallmark of a very good alliance. Now there's various motives for building an alliance, and we can quickly run through some of these. We can have scale alliances where organizations combine in order to achieve necessary scale. This can provide us, for example, economies of scale in production. It can also provide us economies of scale in terms of inputs. If we're larger because we've made an alliance, we can actually maybe negotiate better our inputs. And that's the first motive for an alliance. So it basically gives us lower costs or bargaining power. The second motive would be access. We often ally in order to access capabilities of another organization. In this simple example, here we've got company A that's allied with company B to maybe access the distribution channel to distribute its outputs. This can go the other way. Company B may say, hey, I need to ally with company A to get the required inputs that I need to produce the outputs for the market that I'm trying to serve. We can also have a complementary alliance where companies will ally with another company to complement their lack of resources or capabilities in one part of their value chain, for example. So we work together. A will provide B with something it doesn't have, and B will provide A with something it doesn't have. And these are what can be referred to as complementary alliances, where we combine distinctive resources to help fill the gap that exists in the other organization. And lastly, we can have collusive alliances, where we basically collude together to increase our market power, to better negotiate inputs, to increase prices for our customers, and whatnot. And now we've spoken about this in the past. Collusion in the form of cartel is strictly illegal in most countries. And if you're going to do it, if companies do it, they keep it very, very secret. Most regulations and laws prohibit this type of activity by firms. So to make the choice, we can look at basically 4 criteria. So we're going to choose between buying or acquiring, making an alliance, or just doing it ourselves through organic development and growth. So here are some factors to consider. The first being the urgency. Acquisitions are a rapid method for pursuing a strategy, and alliances can also be relatively fast. Doing it yourself and growing organically can take a long time because everything needs to be done from scratch. You can buy the skills and resources you need, and this allows you to go very fast. So if urgency is critical, an M&A or alliance is a potential opportunity. Secondly, uncertain. It's often better to choose the alliance route, which is we see here, where there is high uncertainty in terms of markets or technologies. If things work out, if the uncertainty works out, well, maybe you can put an option in to buy your alliance partner. If things don't work out, well, you share the losses and you call it a day. Uncertainty for do-it-yourself, if you invest money into some sort of activity and it doesn't work out, you really can't sell something. If you acquire a company, and this is why this is kind of yellow color here, if you acquire a company, what you could eventually do is eventually sell the failure. Now that can be tough, but if you acquire a company and you're under high uncertainty and it doesn't work out, you could eventually sell the acquired organization. If you invest, as I said, in your own organization developing skills, you can't just sell yourself. And so the best option here is probably a lie. You can manage the risk the best way. If it doesn't work out, there's a lot of risk and uncertainty, and you make an alliance and it doesn't work out, well, everybody, takes on some of the risk, takes on some of the cost, and you go your separate ways at the end of the day. If it does work out, and you've made a bet, if you will, on something working out, and the uncertainty goes away, and you make a super deal, well, you may want to, in the end say, okay, maybe I'll acquire the company that I just had this alliance with. So it leaves a lot of doors open. The third factor to consider would be the capabilities being used or acquired. If we're acquiring hard resources, production units, acquisitions can work. However, if we're focusing on soft capabilities and people issues and cultures and soft issues, well, doing it yourself is best, because as we develop, we're being consistent with our own culture. If we buy a company, the culture can have significant issues in terms of the valuation of the acquisition. So when we're back negotiating, this is going to come in and say, well, the cultures don't match. If we make an alliance, well, we really can't control the organization's resources very well, and that creates another problem. Overall, soft capabilities, if it's an issue for the M&A or for your choice, you'd probably want to go with organic growth, definitely, because it's consistent with your organization culture. And lastly, the modularity of capabilities in the organization. In terms of modularity, if the skills, if the capabilities and resources you're looking to develop or acquire exist in part of the organization, and the organization is modular in nature, an alliance is really nice here, because you can ally with just the relevant part of the organization that you need to work with. Buying a company to have access to just part of its capabilities doesn't make a lot of sense. And doing it yourself, you could do it if it's looking at certain types of innovative capabilities and whatnot. You can also do this in a new venture unit and grow these capabilities yourself over time. But modularity of capabilities, if you can say, hey, we can keep these competencies apart from the main organization, great, launch a new venture unit. If you can acquire through an alliance access to parts of an organization, then alliance is definitely the best way to go. But if you're only interested in part of the acquisition target and the competencies in part of the company, acquiring the whole company just to get access to a little bit of it, unless, of course, for some reason the valuation is super, super low, it doesn't make sense. So we've gone through some of the basics of what is a merger, what is acquisition, and what is an alliance. You've seen, hopefully, the reasons for mergers and acquisitions. You've seen some of the challenges of mergers and acquisitions. And if you have any questions about M&As or alliances, please don't hesitate to contact me. Have a good day, and see you next time.